Well, hello, everyone. Wait, happy Friday, Explorers. Yes, happy Friday, everybody. Sorry for the streaming difficulties this week. It just, things happen. Things happen. I'm back in the home office, literally, and the repair people came and went finally yesterday afternoon with much rejoicing. I don't really have any notes. I just kind of want to get to it. So let me swing on over. That didn't work. There we go. That's worked. And over to the RPG roundup. And as usual, if you guys have things, this is just kind of my default where I start. I would love if I could get stuff from you folks that you guys find important, as opposed to just randomly sifting through Reddit. But we do what we can. This is lukewarm oolong tea for the working man. Good afternoon, Frederick Work. Nice to see you. All right. I'm going to probably skip over OGL stuff. I imagine there'll be a lot, but there's a lot of news coming. Paizo's coming out with something. I think they're calling it Orc. You're seeing hashtag Orc. That's Paizo. Bunch of folks are getting on board. It's going to be really interesting. Some people say it's going to be a new renaissance. I hope so, because the other thing it could be is sort of a great fracturing. Everyone's going off in their own thing, and it makes it harder uh, to have these different communities all talk to each other. For example, you don't see a lot of I don't see a lot of, well, I guess maybe it depends. I'm thinking about go do how much, between say Pathfinder and D&D, do you see a lot of crossover? And I guess maybe, that, like, say in DM Academy you'll find stuff from Pathfinder or D&D, but I just don't want everyone to have these kind of go their own separate ways. I think that's one nice thing with OSR is that even though you might have all these different systems, some of them are more similar than others, that you find people all coming together to just an OSR or whatever place and talking about it, whether that's on Discord or through hashtags or whatever. And so I'm just hoping that whatever this OGL inspired Renaissance turns into, that same intercommunications and that same sort of one community, and not everyone jumping off into their own. I don't want to say closed systems in terms of that by design are closed, but just closed systems just in terms of, okay, I'm in this spot and I'm just gonna be with other people who are also in this spot, sort of thing. Ian says that Watsy had made a statement a couple hours ago, was full of non-committal side speak. Nothing much to talk about yet. Yeah, I saw that. I didn't really read it. I saw the links were posted, and I saw people, or talking about it. Maybe I'll read it at some point. But yeah, it's. I mean, look at in for corporations, right? I don't think I'm. Maybe this will sound jaded, but people are saying, oh, like Ian just said, oh, they're sidestepping, oh, they're non-committal. Like, yeah, but kind of course they are. I mean, I'm sure that I have no doubt that they still want to continue with the original path if they can, and I think they're going to wait and see. The onus is really on us as these different communities affected to keep the pressure on and not just go away so that they can slip it out later, later, and people have forgotten about it for the next thing. Um, we'll see, but I'm not surprised. I mean, it's a corporation; they're not agile. It's easy for a small company or an individual to just all of a sudden pivot. Your big company, all kinds of stuff. You're not going to pivot quickly. You're gonna take your time. So I'm sure they've been probably going around the clock looking at this, going, "Oh gosh, this is bad," and then trying to figure out, well, can we weather it, or do we need to change it, or what do we need to do? So I wasn't. I guess I was. I guess I would say I was not expecting some massive 360. At most, they're signaling maybe that they're gonna kind of turn course a bit. Hey, Caverna, and hey, Terrence, and hey, Derek Man. Exciting times we're living in, Derek says. Yep. Frederick says, freedom is back on the menu, boys. Yep, yep. I mean, it was never gone, but yes. Okay. Tips DMing for a mystery. I don't know if I have anything particular. How does light behave in your world? I try to make it behave just kind of like light. I don't know. Maps and use in colors. Seeing through your own illusions. A telekinesis puzzle. No thanks. Aaron says it was nice to see the player community come to bully Hasbro. Yeah, and what was mentioned. So the other thing, I guess, was that there was some insider in someone from inside. It's coming from inside the house. Posted basically saying, giving a little about the what Hasbro's thinking is and the metrics they're using, and they're using D&D Beyond subs is essentially what this insider, who apparently I guess was verified, or people had said yes, it's a real thing, real person, real, was that what Hasbro is going to be looking at is D&D Beyond subscriptions, and that's where their focus is, and that's probably where a lot of the impetus behind this newer OGL is to push people who are playing D&D into D&D Beyond. So the idea, so obviously people say, well, if that's their metric, then the best way to affect it to get them to see you individually and as a group is to quit your D&D Beyond subscription. But the thing is that's kind of easier said than done. And this is where the nature of media, or the nature of how we're transmitting information, plays a part. Because if you had bought books on D&D Beyond, if you're running a game and you're on D&D Beyond, using D&D Beyond, and you've bought books on D&D Beyond, the digital books, I don't know what happens if you cancel your subscription, because I'm not sure what the subscription does. Does the subscription just give you all the books, or do you have to buy them? I'm not even sure how that works. But I know some people are going so far as to say, I'm just deleting my account, which is fine. I suppose you haven't bought anything, but it's definitely it's not just even just killing the subscription, right? You're losing access to stuff in your game, stuff that you bought because you bought into that ecosystem. So it's going to be painful for some folks. I wouldn't even blame them if they're like, I can't do it. I got 5 or 6 players, or I'm in multiple games and DMing and playing, and I got all my stuff in D&D Beyond, and it's going to take me weeks, whatever free time, just to get my stuff off of D&D Beyond. And then I've got all these books I only have in D&D Beyond. I can't spend another $200 to get the hardbacks. It's going to be hard. And that's what Hasbro is counting on. I don't know, but it's a great idea, and I think hopefully a lot of people will do it. But I'm not. I hopefully no one will throw shade on folks who keep their subscriptions, because ultimately there's that kind of sunk cost sort of thing going on, and I totally get it. If you're like, you know what, I've committed just too much money, too much stuff, I can't just bail out on it because of this. I'm gonna have to show my displeasure in other ways, or maybe downgrade my subscription. I don't know. I've never had a D&D Beyond subscription. I think I created an account on there just because that's where they were posting their Unearthed Arcana stuff, and I think it was gated behind that. So I think I have a login, but I've never bought anything. So it's no, me saying to people, kill your subscription or I'll kill my membership, means nothing, because I haven't done anything with it. Frederick asked that I get a look at the Isle of Ix setting. Not yet. Haven't looked at it yet. Oh, let's see. What else? What do we got going on here? I'm not interested in the puzzle. What are my favorite platforms for play by post games? I don't know. I mean, it's been too long. There were some good ones. Trying to figure out how to run a locate the enemy's base of operations quest. All right, this might be interesting, because this is coming from DM Academy, so it's going to be sort of 5th edition, modern D&D based. I'll give them an upvote. As the title says, my party will be trying to find a rival thieves guild base of operations. I'm wondering if any of you have done something like this with a map before. A skill challenge could be an easy way to do this, but I would like to place a map of the city in front of the players, and then they can gather clues to try to find the base of operations. This is not for my next session, but for a future session, so I have time to do some prep work to make it happen. I will love to hear any and all thoughts. Thanks in advance for the advice. And this is posted by Funkaphone. Well, in this case, I would try to, this is the interesting when you see people talking these questions in kind of the modern D&D forums, is a lot of them, I think, you're coming at it not knowledgeable, or just no information, no experience doing kind of crawl mechanics. And I say crawl, hex crawl, or in this case, maybe an urban crawl sort of thing. So doing it as a skill challenge, certainly one way to do it. You could do it with a combination of things. I don't think that you need to choose one methodology if you were going to run some kind of find the base of operations. It kind of depends on the time frame you have, because some of it could be downtime, which is, I want to go investigate. I'm going to go I don't know, I'm going to whatever the local constabulary, or whoever patrols the streets or runs the town. I'm going to kind of hang out with them a little bit. Maybe I'll hang out in the bars that they hang out in, or I'll see if I can walk along with them and try to get a sense of where some trouble spots are. Where are people having issues, or where are the places that for one reason or another they just don't go on their patrols? Places that might seem oddly if I were to hang out with them on their patrols, I might find a spot on the map that they're staying away from, maybe because they're paid off, maybe because it's too dangerous. But those will probably be good spots. That would to me is kind of a downtime activity, and you could just say, okay, over this week, roll some dice, figure out whatever. Each one of these could be a skill challenge. If you want to run a skill challenge, you could take it and say, okay, this is a great idea. Sort of embedding yourself with the local town guard patrol. But you have to do a couple things. You need to sort of convince the guard that, hey, I'm cool, or follow them. You could break it out and say, okay, here's what you decide to do, and here are the challenges associated with it, and we can role play it out. We can roll dice. We can do combo of each, and that gives you a clue. That might be okay. Here's doing that work will get you a clue, which is you think it's in this part of the city, right? You go on the thing, and okay, you do that for a few days, and you get a sense of, all right, this area, the docks, or the place that's called the Thieves' Warrens, or wherever. Maybe it's the Mercantile District. Maybe it's somewhere you don't expect. Is somehow seems to be sort of off limits, or whatever funny business is going on. Something doesn't seem to be right. Okay, that's clue number one. And then another clue could be trying to find actual thieves and capture them, or talk to them, or bribe them to tell you, and you could kind of figure it out from there. So I would, and some of those might not be downtime. Some of those might be, we'll play that out in an RP session where you go and try to find some underworld figures to talk to. That might be RP, or that could be another skill challenge. I think there are a number of ways you could kind of break it down and then mix in whatever elements you like. That's probably what I would do. And what I guess, and ultimately my bottom line is I would take I would wait for the players' input first, and then decide how to figure it out. Right. That's kind of, and I think a lot of times it's like the old school approach, or what, I don't know, old school or OSR type approaches. Listen to your players, and then from there figure it out. Like, I think sometimes the modern impetus seems to be like, this guy seemed to be like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to do it, and then I'm going to present it to the players, right? I'm going to make a skill challenge and put it in front of them, skill challenge. Whereas my approach is, I'm going to figure out what the players say they want to do with this, and then I will take that and decide how to adjudicate it, which is, oh, you want to do this thing? That sounds like a long-term investment of time and effort. So that's a downtime. Maybe we'll call that a skill challenge. Oh, you're going to do this other thing. Okay, that seems to me to be a couple of role-playing moments where we want to play it out in detail, or some combination. So I wouldn't work from, let me create the skill challenge and then dump the party in. I would work from, what does the party want to do, and then figure out how that works. But there's a ton of different ways to skin a cat, so to speak, on that one. Let's see. Frederick Work says Wretched Folklore by Matthew Thomas looks like a much must buy. Don't know what that is, Frederick. Frederick, you always are spouting out all this titles of stuff that I don't know. You're way on more on top of these materials than I am. I feel like I'm the last to know about stuff that's hitting the streets, so to speak. All right, what else we got? Looking for another set of eyes. That's a feedback request. Okay, I'm going to skip that for right now. How to encourage more inter-party talk. I don't think, I mean, I'm not sure. A lot of these questions, basically how to get the role play stuff going is you really have to you have to give the spaces. And I think ultimately there has to be a reason for it, and the players have to want to do it. And you can't create the want on the player side. You can't push them and say, I want you guys to role play now for 10 minutes. You can try to give prompts, you can try to do things like that, but if you push it too hard, it just becomes a chore, and it becomes something that players aren't going to want to do. They're going to say, or they're just going to not do it, or they're going to do a really poor job of it, or just, they're not going to take it seriously. They're going to just try to do it the quickest way possible. But you can, by allowing players to have their little secrets, and maybe even their own side goals, or information that you're going to give to one player but not another, and then you can encourage them to share it or not, or put them in situations where that comes up. And then maybe you might get some back and forth, as maybe a player who knows something the other players don't, but maybe part of their goals entails not wanting to give all that information up. So they're trying to finesse it. Oh, let's see. Well, my goal is to kill the old master, and their goal is just to meet the old master. Well, how can I finesse what I know without giving away my goal? Something like that. And that might get them talking, because then they have to start thinking in the character. They can't just say, oh, I just tell the party everything. Because then you go, really? You tell them everything? And then when they say, no, 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 not everything, you're like, okay, well, what do you tell them? You tell them what you want them to know, sort of thing. And then maybe that gets the dialogue going. But you can't really force it. I don't think so. I don't think you can. Maybe some folks have done that and have had success. whenever I feel like I'm forced to do something I don't want to do, or I'm not feeling for it, does never feels good. I just feel like, why are you making me do this? Let's see. I don't know Serenity RPG. What else we got? How can I transition smoothly? I don't know. What changes did you make to your play style when you tried the other side? Not sure. Not sure what they mean. Classless sword and sorcery. This might be interesting. So this someone's looking for suggestions for games. I'm always looking for suggestions for games. This is posted by Triple C23. As the title says, I'm looking for a classless sword and sorcery rule system, or a system that would support a sword and sorcery style play. After searching through posts and comments, Black Sword Hack seems like the best option, but not sure if Knave or something else will work too. Any advice? I've been told I need to check out Black Sword Hack, so I might try to get a hold of that somehow. Um, we'll see. Let's see. What are people saying here? On the rules light end of the spectrum, there's Barbarians of Lemuria. Yeah, I guess that's classless. Jarls of the Six Serpents. I don't know that one. On the rules heavy end, there's Mithras and Rune Quest. We did a look at Mithras. I thought Mithras was pretty interesting. I really like Barbarians of Lemuria. I suppose it is classless. You have, what do they call them, professions, but they're just sort of skill bundles, as opposed to, you're not locked into a particular class. Yeah, Ian, I think it was you on, wasn't that you on Macedon that suggested I try to get a hold of it? So I'll reach out to the Merry Mushmen, see if they can send me something. If they choose. There's Conan. Oh yeah, Modifius already lost the Conan license, I heard. That's kind of a bummer. These licenses, I feel like they're switching hands too quickly, or at least maybe some of them are. Savage Worlds. Channel the Demon Lord. It's not class. It does have classes though. More for Savage Worlds. All right, GURPS is also on my list to do. I'm going to do it next week. I meant to do it this week, but then I got sidetracked, so I definitely will do GURPS. GURPS has a light set of rules. I think I'm going to do the GURPS light and see how we get from there. All right, cool. Just too many games. And not only do I feel like there's too many games now, but now this whole thing with the OGLs is going to make even more people. I mean, even I'm trying to put together something for myself. So, what are we going to do with all these games? Roll to cast magic system. That might be interesting. This is just posted in RPG design. See what they have to say. This is posted by Ecru. Let's see, Ecru Zolivera. Hi all, I'm homebrewing a roll to cast magic system a la the Black Hack and or DCC, but I have a conundrum about how to balance roll to cast and saving throws. Let's use the charm spell as an example. Roll to cast if you succeed, then the target has to save versus the spell casting DC. This option has a more fair, but it nerfs the caster because it has 2 failure points. Roll to cast, and if it succeeds and the target is charmed, this one's harder to balance because if the target is a PC, then the player feels that they had no choice to avoid it. And if the target is a higher level NPC, then I have to create another mechanic to avoid lower level spell almost always being effective against a much higher or a higher level NPC. Can someone please comment on this? Is there another option that they're missing? So before I read what other people said, I think one thing you can do is you have the target. So roll to cast. There's a couple ways to look at it. So there's roll to cast, and the your target for what you're rolling is the spell. So you'd say charm is a first level. Let's just say it's a D20, and we're going to say that the roll to cast is 10 plus level of the spell. Charm is first level, so you'd have to roll and beat 11. You'd have to get 12 or more, right? Easy peasy, or maybe you'd say whatever, roll and equal, however you want to do it. Right? So you say, 11, target number is 11. Okay, that's fine. Now you say, well, wait a minute. I got a first level wizard, and I have an 8 HD, I don't know, mummy lord. And now they want to charm the mummy lord. Does that make sense that this first level wizard just has to roll match 11, which is not quite 50% of the time, but close, and then they charm a mummy lord? So then it's like, okay, do they charm and then have the right? Then you get the scenarios. Okay, well they rolled to cast a successfully cast the spell. They rolled to successfully cast the spell, but then the mummy lord saves. Is that fair to the wizard? And I would say it's still pretty fair. I think a lot of it depends on, well, what is your, like, what is the resource involved, right? So you might say it's not fair. It's fair. I mean, it's not any less fair than spending a spell slot or spell point or whatever to cast charm and then somebody saves. So it's no less fair than your average, your just standard D&D style Vancian spell casting. You cast a spell, you spend a resource. Presumably, if you roll to cast a spell and you fail, you don't lose the resource. I don't know whatever resource there is, if there is one, or otherwise you're just rolling to cast. So, in essence, the what you're getting is potentially more spell casting without the resources because you're rolling to cast as opposed to using a slot or a point or something else. The other thing you can do is, okay, casting charm is a first level spell. That is means that your base target is 11. However, you're trying to cast it against an 8 HD Mummy Lord. You are a first level wizard. So the difference between your levels is 7. Therefore, the roll to charm the Mummy Lord becomes 18. And that takes into account the level of the spell. It also takes into account the difference, so it will be relative to the wizard. If you are a 7th level wizard and you're trying to do this to an 8th level Mummy Lord, your roll to make would only be 12 because it would be the difference between you and the Mummy Lord, which is 1, and then the spell level. That could also mean that if you're an 8th level wizard and you're trying to roll charm on a 1 level goblin, that it's 11. Maybe you want to have the negatives. You could say, well, the negative, you can't ever get below the level of the spell, or you could be nice and say, ooh, it's a first level spell and it's against a goblin, so it's like 5. I mean, I would probably say no, it's always going to be 11, but you could do something like that. So that would probably be the kind of two vectors that I would look at. And the nice thing with the second one is it's still one roll, because remember, the more often you're rolling dice, the way I look at it, especially if you have a system like a D20 system where you have flat chances of failure, like 5% always fail. The more times you're rolling the dice, yes, you may have more chances to hit, but you also have more chances just to hit that 5%. That 5% chance isn't going away, ever. Um, so you get down to one roll of the dice, and you are still taking into account the level of the monster. But I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with having the roll to cast and save, because really the rolling to cast is a way of getting rid of the finite resources, which generally means your wizard will get to cast more spells because they're rolling to cast instead of that. So that's really that's that trade-off. So the fact that the target still gets a save is not, to me, a big. Let's see. Ian says not much around this unless you want asymmetric mechanics for the players, or only the players would have a saving throw. Yeah, I'm not. I don't know. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you're gonna have something. Like I said, I think you could add. I kind of like adding. I like these adding relative differences and things, like looking at the relative level of the person doing it against the person they're doing it against. Um, but yeah, you're gonna have something. But I think sometimes you get too in the weeds, and I know I posted a devlog this morning on my finish at 23 hex 23 hashtag thing, in which I spent the last 3 days. And each day I thought about, oh yeah, I need to write an update because I'm trying to do daily updates, but I didn't have anything to update because I hadn't made any decisions, and I've kind of settled on something, but I don't know if ultimately if I love it or not. But that was definitely one of my problems, is trying to. It's also that whole thing of simplicity versus complexity versus trying to stick closer to mechanics people already know versus ones that people don't know. But yeah, I know I'm not a huge fan of having a ton of asymmetry between what the players and non-player characters doing, just because I think it's so much simpler to me when you can kind of construct things mostly the same. And I get, and monsters will have special stuff and things like that, but I like when more or less you can look at a monster, look at a player character, and they're kind of similar, and it's not like it is in some of the more modern games where they work totally differently. Um, yeah, I like the simplicity, and it also makes it easier to move between them. If you want to make a monster into a class, it's much easier when they're kind of working on the same wavelength than when it gets further and further when they get further and further apart. Let's see. Palladium. Oh, goodness. I don't know, but good luck for that person. What happens to a vampire if it's removed from its coffin after regeneration? I don't know if anything happens to it. I don't know. Doesn't it just can't they leave their coffin anyway? Here we go. Need advice. This might be fun. Whoops, and I just hit next page. Let me go back. And always let me know if I'm seeing something that or you see something that I have missed. Did I not hit the button? There we go. All right, so this is posted by Paul 8E, Paul 8Y. Need advice. Enemy tracking down the party after their escape. The party consists of a human barbarian, a gnome sorcerer, a human cleric, dwarf bard, human paladin. They're all level 3. Context is they're DMing Horde of the Dragon Queen Chapter 2. I read it, but ages ago, so I don't really have anything about that. After they successfully infiltrate the camps, they went a little too bold and got caught. They tried to escape, but were quickly surrounded by the enemies. And after Resmir interrogated them, she understood one of the players had close relationships with Leosin. She imprisoned the party and sentenced them to death. During the night, they escaped and avoided any combat by climbing the walls, but failed to do so in a stealthy way. The priest in full plate armor rolled a 1 on stealth, loudly tripping over in the extremely silent camp. The party is now unarmed. They have no rations, no water, no backpacks, nothing except their armor and an axe that our bard of creation made for our barbarian. And that will last only for an hour. They're now running from the camp, but I feel like their escape and the situation calls for a hunt coming from the camp. The need advice part. They'd like to give them a quality session of being tracked down, quality session of being tracked down by Resmir's minions while the party tries to find its way back to the greenest and survive the night. They'd like it to be challenging, hard, scary, frenetic, unsettling, with a good rhythm, and overall a memorable night. Could you help? Well, a lot of this stuff is you can't really. I suppose people will probably differ with me on this. I find it hard to say here's your formula for making it unsettling, some of these things, because you don't know the individual players. A good rhythm is going to depend. All this stuff is going to depend not just on what you as the GM do, but how your party responds to it. Getting a good rhythm is going to be this back and forth between you and the party. You could be trying to create all this stuff, and the party, I'm going to be unsettling, and then it's not unsettling, just not because of what you say, just because the party someone makes a joke, something. Things get just flipped on their head, right? The good rhythm, you could be trying to get this pace going, but then the players are constantly stopping and talking amongst themselves, or arguing, or doing something else, or whatever. That's going to throw the rhythm off. So I'm not going to worry about the pretty much anything of scary, frenetic, unsettling, or with a good rhythm, because those are totally going to be up to variables that you can't or I can't control. Even if I were to give you perfect advice, this person, they would need to follow it the same way I would perfectly, and they're not. No one could expect it to. Now, as for the kind of challenging or hard part, I think we've got good ammunition here, right? You have a priest in full plate armor, so they're not going to be very stealthy. Maybe you would say, okay, I'm not gonna reduce their speed, though I might over the long haul say, look, you're in full plate, trying to run fast. That's not happening. You have the great decision making of, do you go slower, less stealthy, but you're fully armored up, even though you have no weapons. So the full armor, the plate's going to help you a bit, but ultimately at this point, it's not a game changer for you, because you can absorb a bunch of hits, but you're not going to be able to hit for much, and they're just going to capture you. So there's a nice decision point. Hey, you climbed over the wall, priest, you're clanking around, you're slowing us down. Are you going to take off, you rip off your plate? And in this play, I wouldn't say, it takes 10 minutes to take off your armor. I'm going to say, look, a couple of you're just going to tear it off. You're going to slice the leather bindings that are holding it to. You're not worried about putting it on neatly later. It's just get rid of it. So you might say around. And this is where you could probably run a skill challenge with different things. Hey, you can try to, what are the kind of choices you have? You can try to move, kind of your dash, action, run. You could try to do something stealthy, hide, try to anything else, right? Or I wouldn't say you have actions. You could say you can think as a GM, say, okay, we have several categories of actions that we could treat. One is just running away. We're just going to put as much distance between us and that camp as we can and hope that they can't catch up. Seems improbable, but maybe they can. That's certainly depending on, I don't know, whatever factors, maybe spells and things. Maybe they could figure out a way to boost their speeds beyond what the people following them can have. Then there's, all right, stealthy stuff. We're going to try to hide. We're going to try to cover our tracks. We're going to whatever. So that'd be like, we have like running, you have hiding, presumably fighting's off the table, but maybe they could try to Rambo MacGyver up some kind of stuff. So I would think about, well, what kind of things there they have. And in terms of the atmosphere, so who knows how they're going to take the atmosphere, but in terms of the atmosphere, calls in the night, torches in the dark, howling, voices calling, noises coming from different directions. Heck, I would even roll a night encounter just because they're being chased in the woods or wherever outside this camp doesn't mean there aren't any other monsters out in the camp, and that might prevent additional obstacles for the party, but it might also present additional opportunities for the party if, say, they find an owl bear's lair and they decide to get the owl bear all angry and then try to get out of its way and hope that it runs at their pursuers. There's lots of different ways to do, and I would try to mix all those together, knowing that you're going to be getting a lot of the unsettling stuff from those atmospherics, and hopefully you can get into the party. Maybe you'll have success with it because they don't have a lot of their weapons, which I think and don't have a lot of ways to fight back when you're in the modern game, especially. A lot of players are gonna maybe feel powerless or start to feel the oh gosh coming in since they've been sentenced to death. Maybe you can intimate that. Maybe you can have some of them call out, just kill them. They're sentenced to die anyway. There's no reason to capture them and then kill them again. Just kill them. So that adds some extra pressure. That would probably be where I would go from there. Hey, Bullet Catcher. Ryan Smith says, perfect chance to have a friendly third faction help them and take refuge while the surf goes over them, like a Druid Grove or something. Yeah, I mean, yes, you could do that. That to me, if it just showed up now, I would kind of feel a little bit Deus Ex Machina, sort of like, oh, great, the convenient Druid showed up here. But certainly, if there's a context that fits, like they had told someone where they were going, that if you had a moment before they left town where they told somebody, we're going over here, if we're not back in 3 days, come get us, and then the cavalry shows up and it's sort of 3 days, like that makes sense. I suppose you could if you just wanted to bail out of the situation, but I think it sounds like this person wants to play it out. They just want to make it kind of fun. um, but yeah, I guess depending on what your goals are, if it made sense for some other faction to show up, great. I mean, I had a very memorable when I was playing in that one, what was it, Labyrinth Lord game where I was a halfling rogue or thief. There was a part of the whole session when I was the only after the encounter that killed everyone else in the party but me. I was the lone survivor of an almost TPK. There was a whole part of that session where I had to escape from pursuers and get back to town. And I did a mixture of just getting away as fast as I could and stealth. I ended up losing them by finally climbing up a tree and trying to get really as small and hidden up high as I could, and hope that my pursuer who was chasing me on the ground wouldn't really think to look up. And I made a couple rolls and bam, uh, that's how I got through. And it was fun. And I think even though everyone else, all the other, no, that was like 3 or 4 other players, and they were all dead. Everyone was interested in my success or failure. Obviously, my failure was kind of the end of the campaign, or at least the end until a whole bunch of new players were recruited. But again, like I said about that other question, is take your cues from what the party does, but you can certainly add in these elements, letting them know you're making a lot of noise. You're making noise, priest, and you're slowing us down. You're not gonna be able to keep up the pace. What are you gonna do with that armor, kind of thing? And oh, there are voices and torches, and you can count them, and there's a lot of them, and especially at night, noises that they reverberate around, and they can be coming. You can have a lot of fun with all these different kind of elements, and then press the party for kind of what they're doing, and hopefully they'll get a plan, and it'll be fun. For instance, they're thinking they run into the woods and through somebody's house. I mean, I guess if somebody's living that close to this camp, I mean, I don't know. So I don't know. I don't remember much of anything about the Dragon Queen, especially not in specifically chapter 2. So I don't know where this camp is. Presumably, there's no one's just house nearby, but I suppose one never knows. Um, this is where you break out the hex map too. Maybe you want to zoom in and have, say, 1 mile hexes or something, and then you could try to see what there is. If there's anything, you could roll some dice and figure out, oh, what else is in these woods, and then add that into the mix. But the party's not going to, it would be really about, you could probably just use roll some dice with random encounter, essentially, because the party's probably not going to have the wherewithal and the time to go and investigate to find something. They're just running. What do they get when they're running straight into it? Do they find it or they don't? But yeah, Brian Smith, you could totally do some kind of Princess Bride stuff. Of course, presumably, if you were playing through role playing Princess Bride the game, the fire swamp will be somewhere on your map that you would be aware of, and it wouldn't just be you run out in the woods and it just happens to be the fire swamp. It would be because he makes a part of that. I think what you like about it is he makes a conscious choice to go into the fire swamp, right? And so I would want that to be a conscious choice. But hopefully, and again, I probably not in Dragon Queen, probably not in the Dragon Queen map, but certainly in our homebrew, it's a nice thing to have these kind of places that even if they don't know what they are, they've got suggestive names, and then those names will suggest things like, "Wait, this place is called the Fire Swamp. That sounds really bad." Kind of like the the asteroid field and Empire Strikes Back. We don't know what's involved in asteroid field, but we know they'd be crazy to follow us, right? That's the kind of the point. Oh, it's crazy to follow us, so let's go to the place and see how crazy they are. I mean, that totally would work, but I would want that context there. I wouldn't want it to just be all of a sudden, oh, there's a fire swamp here. But you can't always prep for all this. You can't always prep out for all these different things. So I would not blame anyone if they didn't have fire swamp like locations at the ready for this particular set of circumstances. Terrence says, have them accidentally stumble on several unrelated factions, make the mad interrupting a cultist ritual, disrupting abandoned ambush, freeing a bounty hunter's quarry. And I think if I was playing Airplane or like Toon Fantasy, I would totally have you'd be running through like those montages when they're running, someone's chasing someone else through a Hollywood set, and they just keep running through each different. What was in Pee-wee's Big Adventure? There's running through all the different sets, and they're getting pursuers as they go. Yeah, I could totally see that. I don't know. It would seem awfully crowded if that happened in this instance, but I suppose if you're having just kind of a fun gonzo tone, you could absolutely have them. And Terrence mentions a mad world. Good call, Terrence. That's a movie worth watching if nobody's seen it. I imagine a lot of folks have never heard of that movie, but it is a classic. So there's my advice. Probably never going to get to the poster, but that's okay. Oh boy, I feel like these kind of, I don't know why they're downvoted, but I kind of feel sometimes these people put these questions are almost feel like they're trolling. I haven't been here in a long time. Why are people mad at the people you're really mad at right now? And I see versions of this question about stuff seem to be asked all the time. And I always wonder, is this person for real or are they really just trolling everybody? All right, let's see. What cosplaying in the far future? Feywild Wedding Festival Skill Booth Help. Oof, that's a mouthful. I'm not going to even get into it with balancing encounters in 5th edition. No, thank you. A lost maze from days past they can't find. Artificial climate Earth. I'm running low. Another swig of oolong tea for the working man. Preventing players from building glass cannons. I'm curious why they want to. I'm interested in this one. So a glass cannon, the kind of someone who does a lot of damage, big damage, but very little survivability. And your sort of classic sharpshooter might be the way where you're a sharpshooter, they got their gun and they can hit you from 1,000 miles away for a big ton of damage, sniper rifle style, but they got 4 hit points, kind of thing. Low, their armor class isn't high. They've got very little protection, so they do a lot of damage, but then they're easily eliminated. EX class overview handout. Did I miss that? I'll go back and find it. Putting a message in a bottle here. Someone's asking about a method to prevent players pouring all their attribute points into an attack and neglecting their health. Whoever you are, this idea just came upon them. They hope it finds you. You can always put up a sign at the entrance to a cave that says cannot enter until you have 21 HP. No. Oh, that's sorry that comic who quit. That was one of your jokes is bad. Is bad. No, don't put a sign like that. You would got to be so high to write this ride. All right, I'm looking for this. Where is this BX? Oh, here we go. Okay. Algebraic Variety posted this to ROSR, and they just posted it. Oh, it's just okay. Well, here you go. Certainly nice. Just has a table with your class, their prime requisite. Condition. I guess if there's a okay, I think this means Constitution has to be greater or equal to 9, Intelligence greater or equal to 9, Dexterity and Constitution greater or equal to 9. Their hit dice. where they hit level 2, equipment restrictions, special abilities. That's succinct. I might, I don't know what condition does it. I might, I put requirement. Sure. Sure. Well, that was fast. Good on you, Algebraic City. Let's go. We'll go into OSR for a minute. The big board doesn't seem to be helping me too much today. How's everyone doing in there? Dungeon, Hex, whatever, 23. Anyone got any cool updates to share? Let me know. I'm happy to go in and check out people's updates and boost those to the extent that me talking about anything boosts anything. Oh, let's see. This didn't age well. I don't know what that is. Castles and Crusades. What is it? It's a game. Here we go. This is one. Yeah, I would agree with this. This is posted by Caulkhead808, titled "Don't be afraid to ask your players to map." I had some hangups about asking my players to map. I honestly thought there'd be a lot of resistance, but each time I've mentioned to my players so far, they've been more than happy to map. Last night, my players asked if they could map when I presented them with a player map, as mapping is their preference now. Try to ask your players to map. You might be surprised at their response. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. I have asked my players to map. The thing is, I just take the other option off the table. What I did with my players. Now, granted, I only have 2, and they're fairly enthusiastic players. And this might not go with everybody, but I simply didn't give them the option of a GM map. It wasn't like, oh, would you like the map, or would you like to see my map? My thing was like, I'm not giving you a map. If someone said, hey, I think, I don't even know if I even said how I approached it, but the question come up, hey man, you got a map of this? I'm like, I don't know. Do you have a map of this? Because you can do that. You can make the map, but I'm not giving you a map. And that was it. And then if they don't want a map, hey, look, if you don't want a map, that's totally fine with me. Then if you get lost, because I will role play you going back out. You're not going to get to the bottom of the dungeon and then just star wipe back to town. It's like, okay, you got what you think you came for. You got a door in front of you, that you came through. And I might do a little bit like, yeah, you remember this corridor because you're just in here. But now you get to these things and things have closed, whatever has happened. So now find your way back out. And if you didn't clear out the dungeon, then I'm still rolling for encounters, all the stuff. So the impetus is on you to make the map. And I just didn't give them another option. I'm like, your options are these: have no map, A. B, draw your own map. There is no C. There is no, I'm giving you a map. And that worked. But when I say I guess my players were enthusiastic, I think especially one of them, I think was really into kind of playing sort of old school. Right? So it kind of appealed, I think, to part of their nostalgia. Not that they're nostalgic because they didn't have it, but they're reaching for this, I guess, nostalgic image of D&D that kind of helped. And you might get somebody who's just totally like, well, I'm not doing it. But probably in that case, I go, well, then this ain't the game for you, pal. It is what it is. But I just think that, ultimately from jump, just make sure you're setting up the game that you want. And if you want your players to map, then say, hey, my expectation for you is to map, track your resources. And if you're not into it, if you're looking at that going, oh, that's too much, then don't join this game. Hey, if you're in the Denver, Colorado area, you got DCC going on over there. 2d6 versus 1d100. Curious what this is. Ian says, my players were mapping over a few sessions, and Wednesday, when they closed the dungeon loop, the map was totally wrong. I mean, I think they're bound to be somewhat wrong. I don't know I've ever seen anyone, and myself included, just nail the dungeon map. There's always some oddity or something you didn't get right, but that's kind of part of the fun of it. And then and that's kind of the neat thing. If you do revisit these dungeon spaces over and over again, like a Castle Greyhawk or some other kind of mega dungeon type, is that they'll get chances to refine their map, learn from their mistakes. Is when they go, okay, we're in this corridor and there should be the big room to our left. And they confidently go, GM, we turn to our left. Is the big room there? And the GM goes, nope, not there at all. Then it's like, oh, dang it, where did we goof? Sort of thing. So that even becomes part of the fun. Ooh, Brian Smith says they posted a Dungeon 23 update in the forum. Nothing too spectacular, but did a batch of chambers. Cool. I will look at that at the end. I'll go there. I actually have the forum tabs right there. Intricately simple. Hey guys, I've been running lots of old D&D lately, and just occurred to me that OD&D and BX use 2d6 for morale checks and reaction checks, but 1E uses 1d100. Anyone know why? I'm curious. Let's see, and then we get some information. I mean, it's just a matter of how many different things that you want. I mean, yes, the 2d6 doesn't. So people say bell curve. It doesn't have a true bell curve. I think you have to have 3d6 for a true bell curve. I'm not sure what difference it makes. Maybe it just makes uh what the statisticians or people who work with odds and things feel better. I don't know what the difference is between the kind of pseudo bell curve you get, or if there's a different name for it with 2d6. Is 3d6? I can say technically it's not a bell curve, and I'm not saying this is some kind of expert. It's just what I've been told. It's not a bell curve, but it's close. But anyway, yes, you do get more chances. If there's a higher chance you're going to land in the middle of the range of numbers than at the edges. Whereas a D100, you don't have that. But what you do with the D100 is you can do the same thing. You're just constructing it using the percentage. So if you say there's a 5% chance of them being absolutely hostile and a 40% chance of them being not, you're constructing your bell. You can construct your bell curve. You're just doing it in different ways. So that really doesn't make much of a difference, because ultimately you could take the bell curve or the whatever pseudo bell curve you get with 2d6, and you could map that out more or less into 1d100. There's on a 1 in 6, let's say there's a 50% chance you can do it that way. Like you can skin the cat a bunch of different ways. Obviously, the more numbers you have available to you, the more granular you can get, kind of thing. That's really about it. It's just a matter of what kind of dice you like. Pretty much that is. Ryan Smith says, whatever's smaller than a bell, maybe it's called a chime curve. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know what it's called. The thing is, you can do it in different ways. You can do it on a D20 too. It just the increments. So the big thing with your die type, what your die type is really going to give you is is essentially how granular you can get. So for instance, let's just start. Your smallest die type is a D4, which means that your chance of hitting any one number is 25%. So then if you're rolling a D4 to check to see your percentages, then you know that each one of those is 25%. And you can add multiple dice. You can say, okay, now we're going to do 2d4. And then the odds of getting a 2 are 25% times 2. Because the only way to get a 2 on rolling 2d4 is to get 2 1s. So you can do that math, right? So the more dice you add is going to shrink down that number, but your starting percentage is going to be fixed. Each face of the die is going to have the same percentage as the next. And then D4 is 25%. You get to D6, it's a 15 point something percent, I think, or 16 point something percent. And then, at D8, it's, 1/8. At a D10, it's a tenth. And then you get to D20, it's a fifth, D10, and then 10%. Then D20, it's 5%. And you get to D100, it's 1%. So you can get more granular. But if you don't care, if you're going to be like, well, it's 20%, I don't really care about the 25%, then you could just use a D4. You have that already. Or you can say, well, I only need 5% chances are good for me. Well, then D20s work. And I think for most things, when you think about it, do I need to really get more granular than 5%? Does it really matter? Oh, it's got to be 3% and not just like, it's 5% is too high of a chance for a crit. It's got to be 2%. Well, then you could roll D100s. But I often find that, honestly, that 5% granularity is probably enough. And then you could add advantage and disadvantage and other things like that, give you ways of kind of swaying the numbers. Obviously, plus and minus modifiers can help kind of sway the numbers. You can go down deep rabbit holes on something like any dice when you're doing all this stuff. And I've done that a little bit. Pretty fascinating stuff. And I just watched a video, was it yesterday, on the probabilities and figuring them out for rolling with advantage. It was really neat stuff. But I think the key thing was, like, the more dice you roll, the advantage was it the number of dice? I can't remember the exact math, but basically, like, if you're rolling 2 dice, then the average for what you're rolling becomes 2/3 point plus 0.5 of whatever the number is. So when you think about it, if you're rolling 1d6, then your average roll on a d6 is 3.5. That's how it works. So d10, d20, it's 10.5. I don't know how that we always get the 0.5, but it's there. So you get, okay, so d6 average rolling 3.5. If you roll with advantage, your 2d6 becomes 2/3 of that 0.5. So then it becomes 4.5. And then you can do it. So you can really do some interesting things with figuring out the math if you're building kind of a dice pool type system, is you can see how that average jumps up, which is why you go from like the average of 3d6 down the line. If you're doing 3d6 down the line, your average is 10 or 10.5 or something. But then if it's 46 drop one, it becomes like 12.5. Anyway, like it was neat. It was cool. It was neat. Check it out. I don't remember the name of it. Unfortunately, I'm saying check it out, but I don't know where to check it out. People are just going on. Okay, that's cool. All right. Nothing really to there. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, you just find the dice that get you the kind of numbers that you want and go from there. What else is going on? Should we go? What time is it? What time is it, everybody? All right. 8 minutes left. Let me go to the Dungeon 23 hashtag just to see what's going on over there. All right, so it says the average of D6 is 3.5. Didn't know that, but I guess it should be more optimistic than always having assumed it was a 3. Yep, it's 3.5. Now, I don't know what that means when you're actually rolling dice, because obviously you can never get a 3.5. I always just bump it up and say 4, but I don't know. But yes, whenever you want to know what the average roll is for a die of any size, it's half the die size plus 0.5. So a 20-sided die, 10.5, 10-sided die, 5.5. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know where the 0.5 comes from, but it is there. So yeah. So when you're looking at like attributes, so that's why you can look at the statistics and say, okay, when you're looking at 3d6 down the line, the average is really 10.5, right? Because it's d6 3.5 plus 3.5, which is 7 plus additional 3.5, so 10.5. So 3d6 down the line does give you average of 10 in every stat. Add another, you add 46, and then you're getting, another 3.5 at the end of it. So you're getting an average of 14. And then once you start doing drop, I don't know, drop lowest probably messes up with that, around with that somewhere, but you can see kind of how these things start to shift. But yeah, the rule of thumb is just half the die size plus 0.5. And again, I don't know why the 0.5, but it's there. Oh, I'm wondering if there's any kind of cool resource type stuff. Oh, let's just look at some pictures real quick. Progress on the Bastion. Oh, this looks nice. What are they using for this? That's cool. People are really going all in on there. Look at this. This is nice. Nice handwriting. The stores. If you're lucky, the proprietor of the speakeasy might let you rest here for a night or two for a fee. They might even offer you a place for free if you take care of a few problems for them. Exits A is open, B is locked, C and D are heavily trapped. I see C. Oh, D. And there's another. Is that a small C? What is the difference between this C and this C? I'm not sure. So maybe the traps are here, and then that's supposed to mean like concealed, like a secret door. Very nice little maps and handwriting. Wow, cool. I'm glad to see people are still hanging in there since we're getting to, and it's Friday the 13th, which I didn't even know. Or I didn't even think, rather. Cool. Let's see what Brian Smith has to say. What? Going in here. Oh, look at this. I really like the artwork you've been doing, Brian. And the idea of cutting it out into cards and using it is awesome. Oh, and while I have folks, I got my Hex. Probably too much glare to see. My Hex note cards are here. So I've got a full card complement. Let me just blow this up bigger. I'll move this. Hold on a minute. Let me get this. There we go. This is a neat idea. I think I mentioned this maybe in the forum place, but in the forum. But this idea of doing everything on cards and be able to lay it out is very nice. Very, very nice. Because then you can really just mix and match stuff. It's really Brian, like you're making what are those things called? Those like dungeon geomorphs. In a sense. I mean, you're not You're not looking to make all the exits in the same spot or anything, but that's kind of what you're making is these geomorphs, and then you can assemble them however you want. And I actually just have some of the Inkwell Ideas ones, so like these things. Um, oh, it's the same on both sides, but yeah, very cool. Nice shading. Oh, I like that one. I don't know what's going on there, but I don't know if that's blood or red lights or what, but it looks cool. Ooh, and theirs looks like is that some goop or browns. Noise, noise. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, we got a close up. Firewall entrance. I like it, and it's a nice amount of detail. It's some good stuff. I'm guessing there's some light sources maybe on these light sources or columns with lights, but it's nice, but it's not too much. The East State Room or Statue Room, I should say. Very cool. Ian says, pretty cool setup for a shifting dungeon, quote unquote. If your players are into roguelikes, the rooms shift every time you go in. That's sneaky. That's the last one. Nice. And then just to show, that's my own thing. And here's a earlier sample, no colors, but I really like this idea. So you can use a pin board or something. You can tack all your rooms in there, and then just bam, bam, just there you got your nice little loop going on. Awfully nice. Is this the same? It sounds like some of these are the same. Or is this the same kind of area you've just been redoing? So you said, Brian, that you've been kind of doing and redoing some of these over again. Really cool. My update, which I just did, I guess I'll share it because why not? So I posted this morning. 3 days mulling over mechanics, and I guess I'll just read my post, and you guys can tell me what you think of it. If I've been quiet on the daily updates, it isn't because I haven't been working, but because I haven't been able to make up my mind on a fundamental question, and that is what mechanics to use for the abstract hex crawling aspects of the adventure. Here's the trick. I want to include a system that is useful for this adventure and potentially useful beyond the adventure itself. I also am not totally satisfied with the BX style mechanics. I just haven't been able to decide where to go from here. This is the current front runner. It may change as soon as the minute I stop typing this. Here's a couple of my design goals. I want player facing mechanics for most cases. And the case that I'm really accepting from this is your wandering monster check, which you could debate whether that is player facing or not, having it be on some kind of stealth roll, or if that's just this stuff's in the world. You could go back and forth, but that was kind of the one thing that I'm holding out. It's like maybe that might be still the world rolls, but I could even revisit that. Classically, all the wilderness rolls were DM side. I want to move these rolls to the player side to reflect the actions PCs take upon the world as opposed to the world just rolling. I want them to reflect player character potential, specialties / skills. Classically, the wilderness mechanics do not change regardless of the level of the character or their class. I want the mechanics to allow for some player character growth and simple specialization. So going back to say BX, you go and you see what the hex crawl, roll to get lost, roll for whatever. There's no what level your character is doesn't enter into it at all. What class your character is doesn't enter into all. What background, nothing else enters into it at all. You're just rolling, and then it's a flat for if you're a 9th level, whatever, or you're a 1st level, blah blah. It doesn't matter. I want to at least give the option of maybe I'm using a custom class. Maybe I want to have them feel more heroic, so where they level up, it is easier for them. That kind of thing. I want to have a method to do that. The original rules don't really they don't I don't really feel like they give you the space to do it. Allow more variation in environmental difficulty, right? Because classically, every type of certain terrain is the same in terms of mechanics. You just say, oh, look, we're in hills. It's always the same for every hill. I wanted to add and at least a few things to be able to say, oh, these hills are a little bit different than those hills, and the numbers can adjust somewhat. And this is where I've actually maybe been a bit of a blocker for me because it's how much of an adjustment do I want to have? And I've gone through having super granular kind of being able to adjust it. And then I've gone back and I'm sort of now on the other side. I'm thinking like, maybe I don't need that much. Maybe I just want some. And then finally, keep it as close to classic as possible. I'm not trying to change it up completely. I don't want to change stuff just to change it. I want to be as compatible with classic rules as I can while still achieving the prior goals. So I'm not trying to make it totally different. So this is where I am right now, and this could change in 5 minutes. Ian says that related, they've been trying to find or figure out a system for player turns spent during travel where the turns are maybe hours and each player declares actions during the turn. I'm working on something with that, Ian, but there are other systems that do that already where you sort of have your, I guess, your sort of exploration, your sort of travel turn, which tends to be for people 3 to 4 hours. What kind of actions are the actions you want players to declare different than your usual ones, being, explore, travel, camp, that kind of thing? So next up, we have expertise versus difficulty. So I just set up some skill levels. You can replace skill with whatever, and the default assumption in is basically this unskilled level, which is pretty much what you get. All the environments classically, it's usually either 2 and 6, 1 and 6, or 3 and 6, what you're gonna find. So it's what's the chance of getting lost in the grasslands? It's 1 and 6. What's the chance of getting lost in the mountains? It's 3 and 6. Right? They tend to be, I think. I don't know if there maybe there's a exception in there, but basically run in here. So your bottom line is you're unskilled. Now, if you feel like someone's competent, you can adjust the skills, basically adjust these different, and then as expert, you can adjust them again. So essentially, you can rate an aspect of your environment in one of these. It's not difficult, it's moderately difficult, or it's extremely difficult. And then you can figure out, you can either just keep it on this unskilled line if you want to keep the default assumptions, or if you want to give folks some different things. And that could be a class, could be a background. So you could say, okay, we're starting at unskilled. And the player says, oh, you know what, my character, they grew up as a child of a woodman. So I think that they might be more better suited to navigating through the woods. So you go, great. So okay, I'll give it to you. So you'll go from unskilled to competent. And then, as I'll note here in a minute, someone says, oh, and then maybe you make up a ranger class. And you say, hey, ranger, when you're out in the wilderness, you are an expert. You get to do the expert track. That's basically where I'm coming from. You don't have to use it. You could just go with unskilled. But if you wanted to show give some levels of potentially player character expertise or background, or whatever, you could. You got a couple of levels to do that. Not a ton. I'm not giving you, there's not like 20 levels deep. It's just 3, but that's probably enough for the most people. I mean, you're going from by default none to 3. So that was my thinking there. The skill levels shown here would be completely optional. Default assumption would be unskilled, which would reflect the classic mechanics. However, there's space here for differentiating between different characters, either through backgrounds, classes, feats, etc. For example, an easy way to implement a ranger style class would be to give them an expert skill level in wilderness challenges. Okay. Ian says, responding to my earlier question, actions would be navigating, foraging, scouting. Caverna says that they see a mechanic where one needs to roll a 1 or 2 on a d6. And if they're skilled or have any bonus, they just roll more d6s. The goal is always to roll a 1 or 2. I've seen that too, Caverna, and actually I'm doing something not dissimilar. You're going to see in a minute. So I'm doing something slightly differently. But yeah, I have seen something like that. Either that's essentially your d6 pool, right? And the goal is always some other number, whether it's rolling 1s or 2s or 5s and 6s or 6s, and you just get more dice to keep rolling. That's totally a way to do it, but that's not my idea right here. Slightly different, but I have ideas for a dice pool part of this, and here we're going to get to it. Scaling the challenge up. So part of my goal is to say, well, I want some of my things to feel different than other things. So I'm dividing the terrain into 3 types. You have your mundane terrain, your fantastic terrain, and your otherworldly terrain. If you're in mundane terrain, just to do it is just 1 success. You just got to roll 1 die and hit that 1 die. If you're in fantastic terrain, you got to manage to get 2 successes. If it's otherworldly, 3 successes. So the question I would think would come up, if I'm normally rolling 1 die, how the heck am I going to get 2 or 3 successes? And this is where I'm trying to tie in a couple of things. We could scale the challenge by asking for multiple successes to complete it. How would a player manufacture multiple successes? By building a pool of multiple dice. Dice can be gained in various ways. So here's where I get so here's where I try to build in some kind of dice pool element. So one, there's the talents. Higher level characters may gain extra dice to spend. So my idea was you could have, if you have your sort of heroic, and so you start your sort of your normal levels, and then at 4th level you sort of do heroic tier if you want, and then your super heroic tier after 8th level. At your heroic tier, you'd have 2 dice by default instead of 1, and then at 8th level you would have 3 dice instead of 2. So you would get more dice, which would mean that you could kind of be scaling up. at your sort of abilities. Tools. You can gain a die by having the right tool, assuming they know how to use it. So to use it's not a perfect example, but well, there might be a compass. You're trying to navigate. You have a rough compass that gets you an extra die. Time. If you're going to go slowly, you're gonna it takes you usually 4 hours to do this, but you're gonna do it in 8 hours, get an extra die. And then can you bring multiple people together to help? So teamwork, get a die. So you can get more. And of course, in this case, there's kind of the dice pool, and there's also this idea of the kind of expertise. So if you have the expert ranger leading in the way, it's going to be easier. Yeah, and then they'll be able to do more stacking on the dice with the dice they have than someone who's not. So I'm kind of trying to do these sort of two vectors, and then putting it together. Like here, might one element of the system. So there's an area that's called the Beowulf, and I would put in the Beowulf, put in parentheses the mundane forest, so it's in the mundane terrain, and then travel moderately difficult, navigation moderately difficult. So you would know to be using this table. So basically, by default 2 and 6, adding 3 and 6 if you're competent, adding 4 and 6 if you're expert. And that's that. That is my update. Yeah, lots of systems use dice pools. I like dice pools. Try to do something a little bit different than just a straight dice pool, and this is where I get sometimes I might be overcomplicating. I mean, I could totally be overcomplicating this, but I'm trying to get a few things right. I'm trying to get this concept of just some rough expertise on the player side. How do I want to do that? It could just be dice. It could just say, yeah, more dice, more dice, more dice. But I also wanted to have multiple things within. Now, one of the things I could do is, and I'm always worried about, like, I think with was it Shadowrun? This play where you can end up with, I guess, and maybe it doesn't matter when we're using so many digital tools nowadays. And part of me is not like, do I want people rolling like 9, 10, 12 D6s? I was trying to keep some different things to keep to a certain, hopefully folks are rolling maybe at the end of the day when they're 8th level, assuming, I mean, if the thing is, you're 8th level, are you still tromping through the wilderness like you used to? Probably not, but whatever. You're 8th level and you've got 3 dice to spend, and you've got a magic spoon or whatever, a dowsing rod that's going to lead you to the water source. You have all these things. And so you're rolling, maybe at that point, you're rolling 5 or 6 dice, but that's probably the top end of the spectrum. So I wanted to keep kind of the dice pool. I didn't want to just keep saying, I'd add more dice and add more successes. I wanted to sort of keep it locked in. I'm hoping, or I'm thinking, my idea is that this is enough. That basically having these, to be able to say the difficulty between your standard hill, let's say your standard hill is moderately difficult. You can have harder hills, and then you can have fantastic hills, and then you can have otherworldly hills. And that's enough. I don't need to have 80 versions of it, because I had one that was my other system I work on had like really granular. You just would add numbers up and you could keep adding numbers. But I started thinking like, man, I think I want to simplify it down. So this is my attempt to kind of simplify that down, not make it too simple, but just make it easy to write, where you can look at it thinking, oh, okay, it's moderate, and I have my little thing, moderate, bam, here we go. Yeah, and I wasn't trying to mix. I didn't want to mix die sizes. I didn't want to have a whole bunch of different stuff. Ian says they played Orcs and Warhammer. They have no problem rolling 90d6. Yep. Smith says, would the size of the die added to the pool be determined by the quality of the talent or tool? I wasn't going to go that that deep into it, but you could do a couple things. So let's say, and I haven't figured all this out yet, and I probably won't necessarily figure all this out. But let's say you have a compass. Your standard compass would just give you a die, right? Maybe then you will, but I have a magic compass that's +2. Maybe the +2 is just added to the numbers. So you get 2 dice and you get +2 on the numbers. So that would kind of help you go from, if you have the magic, basically for this, it would almost make it like, well, you can't, an expert given this magic compass +2, they have to be extremely in difficult, or otherwise they're just going to rock and roll those, which I'm fine. And if you have an unskilled person, essentially it's making them like an expert. And you get an extra die and you get +2. Like, I'd be fine with that, or some combination, or even do it like how magic weapons worked when you had multiple attacks, at least in like the white box, I think, or maybe in chainmail, whereas it would be you got +1 to your first attack and any other attack, so you get +1 or 2 to one the first die roll, but then not the other ones. There are probably some different ways to hack it, but I would do somewhere in there if such a thing came up. And I hopefully a system like this would encourage people to make those kinds of items. Yeah, have the magic compass that does this or that and tacks on, and make some classes that have some. Because I could see a bard type skill that they're not expert like the ranger in the wilderness, but maybe they're competent. And I could also see extending this for other kinds of skills if I wanted to, other kinds of challenges, though this one's, for the wilderness. But I could see taking the same system and basically just adding on, because all I'm looking at really ultimately is a skill level and then a difficulty level, and then a modifier to that difficulty level, which could just be, you could call it complexity, right? You could take out these for when I'm scaling it up. This is for the outdoors, but let's say I want to do something for lock picking. It could be simple, average, complex, something like that. Terrence says that Fate does their skill levels and auto successes, but not sure how that would shake out without fails removing successes. That's true. I'm not sure, Terrence. I probably should read Fate again. Ian says this is very much a decision of what do you want to be important in your game when you weigh what variables add more bonuses: character growth versus inventory decision versus player skill. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think a bottom line is I'd always want, player skill and that kind of ingenuity and use of things to trump any kind of role you make, So I would never say do this regardless. It would be if they have a way to figure out how to do it and they don't need to, then, great. And you could probably hard code something in there. Like if you're an expert and you end up with something that gives you a +1 of the number, then you don't even need to worry about not difficult. You just got it. Something like that. There's some shaping out. I'll have some version, and then maybe I'll iterate on it or not. I probably won't have a chance to go super deep in it. I'll just have to kind of see how it is and update it kind of as it goes. Itching. But that is mine. And this was like 3 days worth of me going back and forth, bathing for it. Do I want 1 in D6? Do I want 2 D6? Do I want D20? Like around and around and around and around. Settle back on this kind of 1D6 system. I don't think it's too complicated. It's not as simple as the other one, but I don't think it's super difficult. And I think it's more, I think I'm hoping that what I get from adding a little bit of complexity is some more ease in scalability. Being able to have some different things in there. But maybe I'll get into it and I'll be mapping out this area and I'll be like, man, this is just not enough. Not enough to make it between these 3 things, and I want more. But I'm thinking it might be enough. It might be enough because I can always add some modifiers. I can add some other things. I can add different cycles. But at the end, I really would like having something that's really super easy where I could just write something like that down and then just go from there. Brian Smith says they like the breakdown of mundane, fast, otherworldly terrain. Makes me want to find a D12 table for each or something for filling in those pesky blank hexes. Yeah, that'll be next. I think maybe because I have to do that and I want to start filling out individual hexes. So I kind of need some tables to maybe help with that. I'll probably do that in tandem. As I'll come up with some ideas for hexes, then I'll also come up with some ideas for tables for ideas for hexes. Round and around we go. All right, folks. I'm going to let you guys go here. Thanks so much for hanging out. Feel free to come by the forums, forums.hex.press. You can check out what I'm doing, what Brian Smith's doing, what some other folks are doing for Dungeon 23. Some cool stuff going here. I also post threads for all the videos and stuff. It's fun. I'm trying to get it to a nice point where we get some more discussions going over there. I chose forums because I want it to be more accessible. I don't want things disappearing like Discord servers that vanish in a moment and aren't particularly well searchable and things just vanish in the scroll. So we'll see. So help me out if you like forums and you're down with it. Come on over. It doesn't really cost you anything. I just need to approve you. So, but other than that, game on, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. I will talk to you later. Bye now.